Very good morning to all of you. And thank you, Rahul, for inviting me again to this conclave. And I remember when I talked last time around this year, around this time only, I talked about what India lacks in terms of becoming the next economical power in the world. And we talked about that what we lack in Indian ecosystem is in terms of knowledge creation and knowledge exploitation. And at the end of talk, I got a lot of questions which were related to innovation strategy, and people were asking how to make sure that our efforts towards innovation becomes effective and they are getting utilized. And that's where I picked up this topic, the topic of winning the game of innovation. And I have used this metaphor of game intentionally, intentionally from the perspective that when we talk about any game, like any game, innovation has many similar aspects. Similar aspects, like it goes through different phases. You need to be competitive to win any game, and at the same time the challenges, as it happens in most of the games, are unseen. And more importantly, like a game is time bound, innovation is also time bound, and you need to understand the timing. That's very, very critical. So this is what I'm going to talk about, and this is what I have put up for today's discussion. We'll talk about what is this game all about, what are the important phases, and more importantly, we'll spend considerable time in understanding innovation strategy. And last but not least, what is the role of intellectual property in winning the game? So that's what I have put up for the show today. When we talk about game of innovation, essentially this game of innovation is taking an idea to commercialization stage, uh, conceptualizing something in the lab, and then taking to the market so that customers are ready to buy it. You need to create that appeal. You need to create that value proposition that customers want to buy it. And that's the stage we call as that we have reached to the innovation stage. If I further simplify it, what it needs to make that appeal, it it needs that you need to have a value driven solution to the problems. And it's very, very important. The terms, when I've written value driven, people come up with solutions, and there are thousands and the millions of solutions you'll find from many problems, but those are not value driven. And what happens, because those are not value driven, they never get used. And hence it's very, very important to understand the value which is driven by the your solutions. And more importantly, there's another perspective which is on the problem. We need to have that knack of understanding the right problem. And when we talk about innovations, I don't think anybody on this earth can forget one of the greatest innovators that we have seen in 20th century, the Thomas Edison. And he put it very precisely. He keeps the utility at the forefront. He says, anything that won't sell, I don't want to invent. Its sale is proof of utility, and utility is success. Now the question comes, how to make sure that the solutions that we are coming up with, they're getting utilized by the customers. And that's where the first thing comes. And that first thing is about understanding the problems. And what I have seen based upon my own experience of last 2 decades, that people don't pick up the right problems. And when we talk about problems, the problems are typically of 2 types: what we call as the obvious and non-hidden, and a hidden or non-obvious problems. And what are these obvious and non-hidden problems? The problems which are very apparent, which, if you talk to your customers, the customer would easily tell you what they're looking for. It's like pain points which these people feel on a very regular basis. Now, delivering solution on this, of course, these are needed, and almost every company, every organizations work on this, because you can't keep your customers unhappy. If you're not working on this, of course, it means you don't take care of your customers. What I'm going to talk about is the hidden or non-obvious problems. Now, these problems, customers can't tell you, customers won't tell you, customers won't be able to tell to you. And that's where the real knack lies. And often when I talk about the hidden or non-obvious problems, I get reminded of a quote from Mr. Henry Ford. And he says, if I would have asked my customers what they would want, they would have said a faster horse. They would have never told that I need a car. Another very important example which I've seen in my lifetime is related to WhatsApp. No customers complained about internet messengers, but then somebody realized that there's a hidden problem with the customers, and that's how people came up with the WhatsApp. It's very, very important that we understand the gravity of the problems, and bigger is the problem, bigger is going to be impact of the innovation. So we need to be very, very clear when we are starting our innovation journey. We understand the right problem. And as Albert Einstein also says, if I were given 1 hour to save the planet, I would spend 59 minutes defining the problem and 1 minute resolving it. You need to understand problem in very, very minute details, because that's the primary thing, or that's the the starting point for your innovation journey. And this game of innovation kicks once you have identified the right problem. And if you talk about the innovation process, the innovation journey, that's how it looks like. It starts with the problem, of course. But then once you have the problem, what you start doing, you start ideating. You start looking for ideas. How can I solve those problems? And these ideas are basically imaginary ideas, technical solutions, the innovative solution that you look around, based upon basic scientific and technological principles. And then from ideation, then you zero down on few selected ideas which you want to pursue. And once you have zeroed on based upon certain metrics, I'm not going to talk about what are the selection criteria, how you can select. That's a different topic altogether. uh, Once you have reached to the selection stage, then you move to your acquisition journey. And acquisition journey is actually, now once you have ideas which you want to pursue, you want to have the real time solutions. Very, very important, because ideas on paper, you have to convert those ideas into real time solutions. And that's where you start your journey. You start your research and technology journey, research and development journey. And of course, once you reach there, then you move to the exploitation stage. You commercialize that. That's the stage, which we call as we have reached the ultimate goal of commercialization, once you are able to sell your invention. Okay, so this is the typical process which any innovation journey would follow. Now, the basic question around the innovation strategy lies around that how you are able to create, deliver, and capture value. That's the first fundamental question you need to answer. And the second fundamental question you need to answer is, suppose we have created that value, how are we going to retain and protect that value? How we are going to have that sustainable competitive edge? And that's where the role of intellectual property comes in. And we'll talk at length about both of these things. So you need to have clarity on these two very basic questions when you start your innovation journey. Once you have moved from ideation, selection, and once you have zeroed on your acquisition path, once you have zeroed on that this is the path which I'm going to take, you need to question whether that chosen path is able to create, deliver, and capture value. And second, if that value you are able to retain and sustain. And that's where the role of intellectual property comes. We'll talk at length both of these. Now, when we talk about answering the first question, how will we create, deliver, and capture value? I'm just putting up a figure which I picked up from a very famous book, Edison in the Boardroom, and I would refer and recommend all of the innovators to go through this book. It's one of the best books written on intellectual property strategy. And this figure actually tells that less than 5% of IP in a portfolio is actually directly utilized. And I'll give you another figure. Worldwide, the statistics is that not more than 10% of the new product developments are successful. So the success rate is less than 10%. Now, what happens with those new product developments? What happens with these portfolios, which is 90% which gets unutilized? And when we talk about IP portfolio, patent portfolio, of course, we need to understand that if you're talking about a successful patent portfolio, means all those 90% portfolio had element of novelty, and so is case with the new product development, because that's what we call as a new product development. And when I have a brainstorm around this, I have deliberated, debated with my fraternity, with my ecosystem around. I've found very revealing observations, and these revealing observations which I've listed. The first and foremost is the age old creativity has been, too much around novelty, uh, and focus less on value. Okay, but we need to understand that it's the value which is perceived, it's the value for which customers pay, it's not for the novelty. Okay, and we have overhyped the novelty. It's essential, of course, when we talk about innovations, but novelty without value has no consideration or at all in innovation process. And that's where we need to have a very deep dive in terms of understanding when we are coming up with any chosen path that we want to pursue. And what is that? That if is our chosen path is valuable or not. And what happens most of the time, people are so much fascinated by the novelty, and it happens most with the researchers and technologists. Okay, they when they find something exciting, they go all out, they pursue it. Of course, that's very necessary to pursue, to have that persuasion, but without giving a consideration if that novelty is backed up by the value. Is customer going to accept that value proposition which I'm going to propose? That's very, very essential. And hence I say innovation is essentially about creating new values. Okay, so novelty lies in new values. Novelty, if only you are seeing from the perspective of getting a new path, discovered, getting a new API discovered, coming up with a new process steps, coming up without any value consideration, it's not going to be used by the customers. So very, very fundamental, very, very important that we need to bear in our mind. Uh, the second very, very important aspect that we need to understand, that value is relative and a contextual concept. And hence, it's very important we understand what are the key prevalent trends in our domain. I'll give you one example. Today, if you come up with a phone which gives you maybe a 5 MB of extra storage, it's not going to excite the customers. Even you come up with a 1 GB or 2 GB. But if you talk 15 years back when the smartphones were launched, the mobile storage was one big value proposition which was adopted by the mobile players. For one extra GB, for 15 GBs, you were able to charge extra for that. But that value is gone now because it has reached to the saturation level and it doesn't excite customers more. So is case with the cameras also. You come up with an extra 5 pixels, it's not going to excite. But if you look back 15 years back, you would understand and appreciate that extra pixel in your camera would be was in a position to get extra value for the manufacturer. So it's very, very important to understand that when we are taking a path, or when we are starting an innovation journey and we have taken a path, we understand that value that we are proposing, where does it stand vis-a-vis our competition, vis-a-vis existing value proposition. That's very, very important. And then assess it whether it's going to fetch value or not. So value is again perceived by the customer, it's not what we think. And that can only happen when we understand the competitive landscape nicely, diligently, and comprehensively. Very, very essential. And for doing so, it's also important that you understand what kind of organization you are. And I know I might be talking to a lot of technologists and the young innovators. And when I talk about researchers and technologists, of course, this is the first kind of organization you are first to the market. You need to be R intensive, research intensive. But there are many organizations which will believe in another philosophies, follow the leader, application engineers, me too. All those are relevant. The innovation opportunities relies and revolves around all these four type of categories. But you need to make that assessment, what kind of innovation effort you are going to put in. And if you are going to be R type, you need to understand the journey of or R type of innovation. And as it happens, technology readiness skills that people refer most often, you need to understand how a typical innovation journey looks like. And you need to also appreciate that there would be a phase, what we call as a valley of death, where most of the invention actually die out. They don't reach to the innovation stage, primarily because this is the time where you need a lot of funds to scale up your invention, to develop your prototype, to come up with the demonstrations. and you need to prepare for this well in advance if you are on a journey of our type of organization. And you also need to understand and appreciate that this valley of death is more pertinent, it's more considerate for hardware type of innovations, not for software innovations. They don't need a lot of funds. If you come up with an app, if you have a good value propositions, you don't need a huge investment in terms of putting up a demonstration plant, proving your technology. And that's where you need to prepare well in advance. You need to create that value proposition. You need to create those results so that when you approach for funding from industrial organization, when you approach for funding from the investors, you are able to tackle this valley of death phase. And if you survive this, your probability of success definitely increases, because this is the phase which is the most cumbersome in innovation journey when we talk about the research intensive organizations. The another very important aspect is timing the innovation. So you should not be, and you don't need to be too early or too late. If you're too late, you have missed the bus. So you would become another me too. Even you believe that you're our type of organization. And if you're too early, it means that actually the ecosystem is not ready for you to adopt that. I'll give you example of IoT. People nowadays talk about, there's a buzzword about IoT and artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, deep learning, all these concepts were there for quite some time. Even the basic principles, everything was lying around. What was missing? We had issues with the high internet speed. We had issue with the high storage. So now all those things have been taken care, and that's why we are talking about there's a verge around. Everyone is talking about that. We need to talk about artificial intelligence, high-end data analytics, because the ecosystem is ready now to adopt those kind of innovations. So you need to be very clear. A very simple and straightforward examples I would give: the digital payments and many of the work from home technologies become so adapted primarily because of the COVID implications. Okay, so you need to understand, appreciate, to time your innovation. That's very critical. And as it happens, the Gartner hype curve, this is a very famous curve. It says that every technology domains goes through a peak of inflated expectation. You see a lot of news around that, and then it goes to trough of disillusionment, where you people start realizing the reality, and then actually the slope of enlightenment happens, where people start coming with real time solutions, and then the plateau of productivity comes. Now, ideally, as it says in the stock market, you can't time the market. I say the same thing for the innovation also. It's very difficult to understand that what is that right time. Is it during the peak of inflated expectations, during the plateau of productivity? But uh, if you understand and assess the situation well, I think somewhere around trough of disillusionment and the slope of enlightenment is the right time for your domain, where you need to start and pick up and maybe press the accelerator, because that's a time you will see that adaptability of your innovations become more and more clearer, more and more pertinent. Another very important aspect that you need to understand to make your innovation journey success is the diffusion of innovation. And this theory actually says that any innovation, any new idea is actually adapted across the population in certain way. And this the propagator of this theory has actually divided the whole population into different categories. The innovators who want to try new things, and that's true not for only the consumer related inventions, but that's true also for the industrial innovations also. There would be early adopters, and then there would be a main majority, and then there would be main maturity, mature, and then late adopters and laggards. To make your innovation success and call it as a success, you need to target the main majority early. If that's a tipping point for you, if you reach that, then there's no stopping. But all your assumptions should be based upon this: what is that size of main majority for my innovation? And if that is the size that I need to target minimally, what is the economy of scale that I need to look at? All these assumptions are very important for you, and that's why I say Your assumptions need to be well thought out. They need to be very comprehensive, backed up by the data. Uh, and once you are clearer on this, that you and we try to answer the first question, that creating the value, delivering the value, and capturing a value. I'm not going to touch upon a lot of things on capturing the value and the delivering the value. There are different ways, but suppose we have figured out that this is the value that we want to cover. We need to be very clear about that. We don't need to be get hyped by the novelty only. We need to have more emphasis on the value proposition. The second is very important, is that we need to understand that there's a value of that if we are research intensive, and that's the time, if we are related to hardware innovation, that's the time we would need funding, and we need to be well prepared to survive that phase. We need to time the innovation well. That's very important, and for that we need to have understanding where are we. And third, very important here, is that we need to have understanding about our competitive landscape, and that's essential primarily to know that how my value proposition stands vis-a-vis with my competition. Now, having clarity on this, the second very important thing happens is that how you are able to sustain that competitive edge. Suppose you came up with that solution. Now the question comes, are you in a position to leverage that competitive advantage? And that's where intellectual property comes. So intellectual property, the role of intellectual property is actually essentially a tool to protect your competitive edge. Okay. But again, the starking revelation which I have made based upon my experience, that only handful of innovations are able to leverage the IP advantages. And why it happens? The first and foremost is that IP is not considered during the innovation design stage. So what it means, when you're trying to figure out what is going to be your value proposition, you are not considering that how you are able to, or how would you be able to protect it through IP protection. The second is poor appropriability regime. We need to also understand IP is not this design. IP was designed holistically to cover all ranges of innovations when IP Acts were designed. So there's few technology, we have few domains where appropriability regime, the enforcement regime is very strong, but there are few where it's very poor. Understanding that is very, very important. And the third very, very important aspect related to how you leverage the IP based advantage is that people always consider IP is equal to patent. That's not correct. Okay, IP is more than patents, and you need to have that understanding. I'll touch upon this shortly. And when I talk about the appropriability regime, and how you are able to leverage that, we need to also understand that every innovation needs the complementary assets also. And few complementary assets are freely available, few are tightly held. Uh, and understanding about these complementary assets which are needed for exploitation of innovation is very, very necessary to understand what is your position. And I'm just giving you an example of software related innovations. You hardly need a lot of complementary assets. These are not tightly held. Okay, it's easy to make your app popular, make your dashboard popular, make your platform popular. But when we talk about hardware related innovations, you need a lot of complementary resources. Maybe you need a manufacturing capabilities, you need to have distribution channels, and you need to understand how strongly these complementary assets are held. Are these freely available? Are these tightly held? And then you need to combine it with the appropriability regimes. That's very important. And if your appropriability regime in domains in which you are pursuing your innovation journey is strong, and complementary sets are also tightly held, you can dominate. And you do need to have access of those complementary assets, of course, to dominate the market. But suppose these are not freely available, and appropriability regime is also weak, it's very difficult to make profit, because you will have very crowded competition. Every now and then person would be able to imitate what you are trying to deliver in the market. And given that the complementary resources are easily available, you don't have a control on that also. Okay, so there are many examples which would fit in this no, the four quadrants category. We need to understand where do we fit in, and then accordingly take and decide whether we should pursue that path or we should change our innovation strategy. Another perspective, which is very important, why people are not able to succeed on innovation journey. Again, because having patent is not enough. Having an IP is not enough. An IP you can get once you satisfy the criteria of novelty and inventiveness. But suppose that novelty and inventiveness is not creating any new value, is not capturing that new value, is not covering any new value, that patent would remain in the shelves. It's not going to be used by anybody. And then we also need to understand that IP alone is not sufficient. It's IP along with value is sufficient. That's the whole point. And IP is not patents. IP just not patents. It's much more than that. I'll give you one example. If you're talking about industrial technologies, from concept to commercialization stage, you will see there's a trend of decreasing patent share as you move towards the upscaling, but the know-how share increases, the tacit knowledge increases. You need to understand and appreciate that this tacit knowledge is very, very critical if you want to sustain your competitive edge in the market. How you sustain, how you protect that tacit knowledge, know-how is going to be a key determinant for your success. Another very, very important aspect is related to trademark and the branding. Okay. And let me just tell you, IP power of many innovation is reflected after IP expiry. Many times people come up with the formulations, they come up with a very good brand, and as it happens, the patent expires, these become open for people, but people still go for the original one. Why? People develop an association. IP helps you in developing that association for long-term exploitation. And that can only happen when you understand branding, when you understand that trademark is very, very important. Like it happens that switching cost in OEMs is difficult. There's a stickiness in consumer products also. So people need to think like when somebody had come up with a toothpaste, people still call toothpaste as a Colgate. Why Colgate could develop that association? At one point of time, that formulation might have been patent protected, but now that formulation is freely available. In spite of that, if people have developed that stickiness of using Colgate, people would still go for Colgate. Even that similar formulation is available. So happens with the pharmaceutical drugs also. Okay. So we need to understand that there's many other aspects of IP which are very, very important to maintain, create, and sustain that competitive edge. And that's where the crux of the game lies, that you need to know that how we can reach to the center. And to reach to the center, you have multiple obstacles. Okay. And what is this center? This talks about that when you're looking for solutions, your solutions need to be valuable. And along with valuable, if they can be patented, then you have win the game. Means you have something which is accepted by the customers. You have something for which competition can be kept away because you have IP protection around that. Okay. And that's the innovation game. That's the game that we have to win. And how does this game starts? This game starts with that you have problems and you come up with the ideas. And then ideas, you start looking for the solutions becomes inventions. Not all inventions become accepted by the customers. Only few become accepted by the customers, and those become the innovations. And again, all the inventions are not patentable inventions. Only few inventions become patentable inventions. And that's the game lies at the center. You have the inventions which are acceptable by the customers. Those become the patentable innovation, and that's where the game lies. That's where the success lies. If you reach there, you have found the gold mine. So key question, if I have to sum up my talk, I would say when you're starting your innovation journey, you need to think through: are you creating value or creating novelty? Very, very important. And as it happens, it's underlying value which is critical for the customers. And the second is, can you protect your competitive value proposition? And that's where the IP protection comes. It's very, very important to understand this. And let me just tell you the single most reason why innovation efforts, or why innovation efforts fail. And they fail primarily because they there's a gap in terms of understanding what customer is wanting, what customer values, and what we deliver to the customers. And primarily it again happens, this gap in understanding happens because we overhype novelty and we don't give much consideration to the value proposition. And why that happens, again the reason for that is that many times we are biased for our opinions, for our paths, and we don't see those paths from multiple lenses. So you need to back up your assumptions through multiple lenses. You need to test through before you start your innovation journey.
Yeah, yeah. When is an innovation considered complete? How do you know it's
Ah,
complete that you can
yeah.
claim it?
So, yeah. So, very good question, and that's where I was saying. You come up with something, and suppose one customer buys it, you can't say it's a successful one, and that's where I'm saying you need to target at least the early majority. And early majority, I mean, if the mass size of a particular domain or a particular innovation is 100, you need to touch that minimum early majority mark to call it as a successful one. And that's where you also need to make in assumptions that what is the economy of scale that you would need to touch upon that early majority.
How to decide when to stop maintaining a patent
Yeah.
granted to universities?
Yeah, very relevant questions. As it happens, Vijay, uh, what happens is that many times we are not able to understand whether what we have created is valuable or not. Okay. And sometimes we create, and it happens, as I says, 90% of the IP portfolio remains unutilized. So what could be the reason? The first reason could be that we have created something nobody's wanting. Okay. Or the second reason could also be that we have created something but it doesn't reach to the right audience. So you need to do your customer mapping well, that if I have created something, who could be potential customers, and then you try to make that reach to those customers and understand what is their viewpoint. As it happens, we go with a single mindset, what we like, or we are so much fascinated by the novelty, we don't understand why this is not going to be valuable for end customers, whether it's an industrial innovation or whether it's a consumer related innovation. And that's where you need to have a lot of understanding. You need to reach out to the right customers, have that Q&A sessions. What are they wanting, why this is not good, what can we do to make it better, so that you would be ready to accept it. So those are very pertinent strategies that you need to follow. Just because we have decided this is what we will do, we get blindfolded.
Yeah. One more question by Dr. Swati Joshi. How to identify the problem in market? Probably similar to this answer.
Yeah, so yeah, that's the key lies with the understanding. Lack of understanding problems in art. It as it happens, the trivial problems everybody knows. Okay, as it happens now, if you go and want to buy a car and somebody doesn't give you a power steering, you will say, "Oh, I didn't need a power steering. It's a given." But what is that needed to the next level of innovation in steering? This is where the imagination lies. So the typical strategy, of course, maybe next time sometimes I can come up with a session on ideation, that how to imagine and come up with the scenarios which are possible. So what you do in such a cases, you come up with the scenarios that I'll come up with solutions. And once you come up with those solutions, imagine solutions, you reach out to the customers to understand that value proposition, that is it exciting my customers if I come up with that level of value proposition. And you validate that through multiple lenses. So not just reaching out to one customer, one industrial organization or two. You need to re-articulate your question, you need to re-articulate your value proposition and take that customer's feedback before you start your innovation journey. That's why I'm saying design your innovation journey. That's very important. And designing the innovation journey is essentially talking about understanding the value which would excite the customers. The second, how you would be able to protect that value.
Is commercialization necessary for successful innovation? Dr. Vikram Singh Chauhan.
So, doc,
I-
yeah. So, I think commercialization is integral part of innovation. You will not
Integral
call
part.
anything innovation if it's not commercialized, if it's not used. And definition of commercialization, of course, varies industry to industry. Innovation is all about that, and you have created something, it's getting used. That's simple. Okay. If you have created something, it's lying in papers and patents. That's not what we call as innovation. You can call it as invention.
Yeah, maybe one more question before I think Dr. Hemang Shah, he's here, and within 2-3 minutes we can start his presentation. Can we commercialize, Dr. Paramasivam, question, can we
Yeah.
commercialize patentable idea before grant?
Yes, we can do that, Dr. Parmasivam, but you need to do freedom to operate. You make sure that what you have come up with, it's not infringing on somebody's existing intellectual property. But most of the journey starts once you protect. People start their innovation journey, so you can commercialize that, provided you have freedom to operate. Grant may take time. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day ahead.